All right, class. Today we will be talking about the second formulation of the categorical imperative. So you already know the first one, which is, right, can you will that your maxim become a universal rule for everyone to follow? If the answer is yes, then you can do it. If the answer is no, then you can't do it either. Gives us access to the moral law. The second formulation of the categorical imperative is actually a derivative of the first. But remember, Kant believes that human beings have intrinsic value, that humans in some ways are sacred, we're ends in ourselves, so that we should be treated a certain way simply because we're human. Okay? And so, as a result, the argument is, the second formulation is, never treat a person as a mere means to an end, but always as an end in themselves. Right? Another way to think of it is, this is a derivative of the first categorical imperative. Can I will that everyone treat human beings as a means to an end? No. Then I can't do it either. But this is such an important thing in morality that Kant gives it a special place, right? Highlights it. Never treat human beings as a means to an end. Earlier, in an earlier lecture, we talked about instrumental value versus intrinsic value. Instrumental value means I value something as an instrument because it gets me something else I want. I value money not because of the paper, but because it can buy things that I want. I use money as an instrument to other things I value. Intrinsic value is something you value for its own sake. The utilitarian argues that happiness is what we value for its own sake. We don't value happiness because it brings us something else. Kant argues we should never treat a human as an instrumental value. I value you because of what you get me. Rather, I need to value you and treat you as though you were an end, sacred, having intrinsic worth. Okay? And so this comes up in a lot of different situations. The fat man in the cave. He's stuck. The water's rising. We're going to blow him up to get out. And Kant says, you're treating him as a means to an end. You're treating him as a means to getting out of the cave. You're not valuing him as an end in himself. You're not treating him as though he has intrinsic value or that he's sacred. You're essentially intentionally killing him that you might survive. This is using someone as a means to an end, and it's wrong. Prostitution. This is a clear example. I don't value, like the man doesn't value the woman as an end. Sex here is not about intimacy, fostering love, procreation, a sense of connection, bonding, right, or love. This is about getting my pleasure met. I'm using this person's body as a means to an end, my pleasure. It's degrading and devaluing. The woman, assuming this is a female prostitute, is doing the same thing. She's using the man as a means to money. There's no looking at the other person as sacred, as having intrinsic worth, and sex as an expression of that. This is about a means to an end, and therefore it is always immoral. Any scenario, even if it's like a one-night stand, and I'm just using you as a means to an end, you're using me as a means to an end, wrong. Every time that happens, it's immoral because it violates the second formulation of the categorical imperative. It can happen in everyday life. I go to a restaurant, if the server looks at me as nothing more than a means to a big tip, so they're friendly and nice, but they really only care if they're going to get a tip out of it, that's immoral. They need to serve, they need to be a server and do their job with excellence, because it's their duty to work hard and do their job with excellence, to treat me with a sense of respect, right? To treat their customers as an end in themselves. Similarly, though, I might look at the server as a means to an end. Just give me my food on time, don't interrupt my conversation, right? And I don't really care about you or treat you with much respect. You're just a means to an end, getting my food and cleaning up. That's wrong. Anytime that happens, it's immoral. Remember, Kant cares about our heart and our intentions. And if that's how we view the person, and that's what's in our heart, it's immoral. Instead, I have to treat the server as an end, with respect, and give them a sense of dignity. And if I do that, then I'm treating them as an end in themselves. I bring flowers to my wife. That looks like a good thing. But if the intent is that the only reason I'm doing something nice is to get something from my wife in return, I'm using it as a means to an end, that's wrong. Rather, I need to be doing this because I love my wife, and this is an expression of my love. That can be universalized and willed. If it's a selfish motive as a means to an end, it's wrong. We can see the utilitarian and deontologist sort of conflicting with one another at this point, right? Often the deontologist wants to suggest that humans are sacred and there have certain rights that can never be violated. But a utilitarian will often think, well, the rights are good for the most part, but we might need to violate them in certain situations to maximize overall happiness and safety. I mentioned after 9/11, right, Patriot Act goes into effect, making it easier for the government to tap phones, search apartments, do whatever they need to do, right, to track terrorists. Certain people said that you're violating our right to privacy. You're treating this as a means to an end. I now become a means, my phone line becomes a means to societal safety, but you need to treat me as an individual as an end and protect my rights. But utilitarians said, yes, we're violating your right to privacy, but it's better overall for the society. So we're going to take that right away from you, right? And that was a real battle between the deontologist and the utilitarian, right? And so I think these things these issues raise themselves periodically throughout. And that's important to note. If you have any questions with regard to what it means to treat something as a means to an end, please let me know, because this is vital in terms of morality and as we move forward, right? What does it mean to treat someone as a means to an end? A famous example is suicide. Kant writes that suicide is wrong, and many people think suicide is wrong, right? But the question is why? People have a hard time answering that. Well, why is it wrong? And Kant says this: you have intrinsic value, not just other people, but you do. You are sacred. To kill yourself is to use yourself as a means to an end, namely to end pain, to end sadness or depression. Life's too hard. But you can't treat yourself as a means to an end. You have to treat yourself as an end, having intrinsic value, which means you cannot love yourself and kill yourself. That's a contradiction, a rational contradiction for Kant. And so, how do you live your life in such a way that you might create good for others? Continue to follow the moral law and be an example to others. Killing yourself can't be universalized because it devalues you and treats you as a means to an end. Again, ending pain. So I hope this helps clarify some of the critiques of deontology, some of the things that people raise as a problem. Some argue that Kant does count consequences, okay? This criticism actually came from John Stuart Mill. He said Kant was really a rule utilitarian. He wasn't really a deontologist at all. And Mill's argument goes like this. Kant wants you to ask, can I lie? I don't know. Can I will that everyone lie? Can I make it a universal rule? And the answer is no, I can't will everyone lie. But John Stuart Mill says, why can't you will everyone to lie? Oh yeah, because we couldn't trust each other, relationships would fall apart, our society would be chaos. And John Stuart Mill says, that's consequences. The reason you can't will everyone lie is because the consequences would be bad if you did. Well, that's consequences. That's just rule utilitarianism, right? Can I will that everyone borrow money intending not to pay it back? No, I can't will everyone do that. John Stuart Mill says, but why? Oh, because if everyone borrowed money and did not intend to pay it back, our economy would collapse. No one would loan anyone money. There'd be no trust. Those are consequences. So his point is that if you dig down deep enough into the categorical imperative, what you find is a person who cares about consequences. Now, Kant responds to this. Sometimes students don't really like this because it sounds like a defense attorney, like wordsmithing it, but Kant says, I'm not interested in actual consequences, what will really happen. I'm interested in logical implications, right? These are abstract consequences. I'm not concerned with what will actually happen if everyone lies. Logically, the implications of everyone lying tells us what the moral law is. So for instance, I don't lie to my date about her outfit I'm not thinking about consequences. I'm just thinking about logical implications if everyone lied, because that gets me out of my situation and it connects me to the moral law, and then I follow my duty regardless of outcomes, real consequences. So he says, I'm not interested in real consequences. I'm interested in logical implications which lead me to the moral law. Now, you can like or dislike his answer, but that's sort of how he responds to that criticism. Because Kant is a hard universalist, there's a problem if you have conflicting duties, right? For instance, as a student, you promise your sister that you'll babysit her kids so she can go out on a date, but you forgot that you have a test the next day that you need to study for. The moral law tells you that you have to keep your promises and your commitments, because you can't let everyone break their promises, so you can't either. But you also have a moral obligation to do your best as a student, to perform your duty with excellence, to strive, right, and give everything you have, because you can't let everyone be lazy or strive for mediocrity. So you need to do well in school and you need to keep your promises, but now you can't do both. Because if you babysit, you won't do well on the exam. If you cancel, you don't keep your promises. So what do? And Kant has a really hard time creating a priority of goods, a hierarchy of goods to help reduce some of this conflict. So I have an obligation to protect the innocent, but I also have an obligation to tell the truth, right? But if telling the truth puts an innocent person in danger, what am I supposed to do? It's a conflict of duties, and it's hard for Kant to help with that. Another issue comes with the fact that he's a hard universalist that makes no exceptions. Like lying. You can never lie under any conditions because you don't think about consequences, you only think about the moral law. So you don't lie. Someone raised an issue with Kant. They said, well, let's assume someone runs to your house and he says a murderer, a killer is chasing him. And so you say, okay, well, yeah, you can hide because, again, you're obligated to protect the innocent. And a few minutes later, the killer comes to the door and says, are you hiding so-and-so? Do you have to tell the killer the truth, right? Or can you say, no, I think I saw him run that way, right? And you lie, sending the killer in a different direction and protecting the innocent person. And Kant says, even then, you cannot lie. The situation has been modified over time with the example of, like, what if Nazis came to your door and you were hiding Jews during World War II? And they ask you point blank, are you hiding Jews? If you say yes, the Jews will die and you'll probably die. If you lie, maybe you can live. I think Kant would say you cannot lie, right? You can't allow someone else's immorality, the Nazis, to make you immoral, right? You have an absolute duty to the moral law. So for some people, they say, this is just ridiculous. We've got to make exceptions here, right? We've got to allow for people to lie to save a life, because on the priority of the hierarchy of goods, innocent life is more important than the truth. Again, Kant doesn't make such distinctions. Maybe you want to. I think what Kant would say is if a killer came to your door, asked you if you were hiding someone, you should not lie, you should remain silent, and then it would be your job to protect the innocent person by trying to wrestle the killer to the ground or to take their weapon away, or right? Because I'm not going to lie, but I am going to protect the innocent. With the Nazi situation, it's a little bit different because I can't overtake them. I can try, like there might be 10 with guns at my door. What do? Right? Again, this is a problem. The final critique of deontology is something like, is reason really universal and objective? During the Enlightenment, when both Bentham and Kant were arguing, reason was thought to be sort of monolithic. If you used it right, it was like math, and it would bring us to these objective truths. But in a postmodern context that we live in now, it seems that people can use reason and come to different conclusions. Two rational people can disagree with each other, especially when it comes to morality. And so is there really only one right answer to these moral issues? It seems like culture, religious conviction, and a lot of other things play a significant role in our conclusions, not just reason. So something to think about. I hope this helps. If you have any questions at all, please let me know, and I'll see you guys online.